You're listening to The Rich Life Revolution with me, Michelle Cooper. My mission is to empower you to step into your next level of wealthy. You'll hear all the deets, a little bit of inspiration, and real life takeaways so that you can create your own rich life revolution. Let's dig in. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Rich Life Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Cooper, and today's episode, number 28, is with my own personal coach, Dr. Eugene Choi. And we're going to be diving in to how your stress response is getting in the way of your creativity. Did you know there's a little fun fact that suggests that adults are in a state of stress around 70% of their lifetime? Now, I think we all know and can agree that excess stress isn't good for us. It causes all kinds of things that we don't want. And I found that realizing that more than half of our lives are spent in that hyper-aware survival mode, fight or flight headspace is a really good kick in the ass to get our brains and therefore our bodies back on track. Now, Eugene, as I said, is my personal coach, and he has kicked my ass. And I'm going to pull back the curtain on my life and my transformation in this amazing interview with an incredible human being. So let me tell you all the deets about Dr. Eugene Choi. He is the founder of the Neurohacking School, an influential community of impact-driven entrepreneurs seeking to unleash their highest potential through neuroscience. With his credential as a board-certified clinical pharmacist and a certified mindset coach, he used his experience to help coach and train thousands of talented, heart-driven entrepreneurs to operate at their highest levels of clarity, energy, and focus. His articles have reached over 10 million people, and he has helped readers take their growth results deeper at both a personal and professional level. So let's dive in to this amazing interview with Dr. Eugene Choi and stay to the end to find out what's next on the Rich Life Revolution podcast. Welcome, Eugene. It's so good to see you. You're one of my favorite people.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. It's always fun having these conversations with you, Michelle.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll give everybody a little bit of backstory. Eugene and I met several years ago. Oh my God, 4 years ago? It was a different world back then. And he just blew my mind. It was in a coaching environment, and watching Eugene wield his coaching magic in the room was amazing. And I've gotten to know him as a team member. We both worked for someone else on their team, and then he's also my coach. So I am so incredibly grateful to have you in my world and have you have my back on all the ups and downs of life and business and stuff. So I'm glad you could take the time and come and chat with everybody today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let's hear a little bit about you, your story. Like, I think it's such a great story, and it's so impactful for somebody who is maybe living not their richest life and wants some inspiration to change that.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up pretty poor, immigrant parents struggling just to get by. They're rarely home because they're always trying to work and make ends meet. And I remember by the time I graduated college, I decided to become a pharmacist. I decided to go into pharmacy school, mainly just because of the money. There was a lot of talk about it being a 6-figure salary right out of college and all that good stuff. And, I barely made it through. I was actually working like 2-3 jobs while I was in college just to fund myself. And by the time I graduated, I just remember it felt so anticlimactic. You spend your whole life thinking like, oh, this is a thing I wanted. I got my six-figure paycheck. I got the nice sports car I've always wanted. I got the beautiful new apartment I was living in with my wife, newly married. And I just remember this sadness, this depression, this anxiety. It was all still there. It's like I remember I'm holding my first paycheck in my hand and I'm like, oh, like, was this it? And I ended up staying there in New York working for about 3 years and, just getting by. And then one day I just had this opportunity to become a filmmaker. And I joined a team of young aspiring filmmakers. And the reason I was able to do this and quit my job as a pharmacist was these three guys were just so inspiring. One was a Harvard med student, decided to quit that for a little bit. The second guy was a Wharton grad, which is one of the top business schools, and he was working at Bain Consulting, which is a huge consulting company. And the third guy was a director at the White House, like one of the directors. And they all left behind their careers to make videos on YouTube, inspiring videos. So I was like, if these three guys can leave their jobs and try something new, and they were all Asian too, and it's an Asian parent's worst nightmare to leave behind these tables.
What do
Yeah.
you mean you're going to leave the White
He
House?
literally had
Like,
to write a letter of resignation to Obama, to the president at the time. And
oh my God.
it was one of the most transformative, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. When you feel that ache, that aching deep inside, that curiosity, I think that was just the push I needed to start this journey. And long story short, it just led to so many transitions. I went into filmmaking. I experienced creating viral content. So I think with the work I've done with the team, whether I directed it, whether I edited the project, whether I wrote the project, we probably got over 30 million views online. We had multiple viral pieces of content. So that actually taught me a lot about marketing, which is what I realize even today I use for my clients, because like they hire marketers and pay a ton of money. And I'm like, there's better ways to do this. I can't believe they're charging you this much when like there's simple things we can do to just grow your brand and all of that. And I have the credibility. I have the experience of having done it. So it taught me a lot about marketing. And then I went back into pharmacy for a little bit because while we were getting a lot of exposure, there wasn't that much money in filmmaking in the beginning. They became pretty successful now, but it was when we were just starting off. So I had to go back. I was the only married one. Kids came into the picture. And I ended up working my way up into the pharmacist world. I was a supervisor for LA County. So now I'm managing 6 major hospitals and over 250 clinics back in the pharmacy world. And it's a cushy job. It's the most I've ever gotten paid. And again, I'm in this like round two of just like feeling so like, is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? My second kid was just born. And I remember sitting at my desk, just sitting there going like, you know what? I don't want to be that dad that just tells their kids how to live their life with my words. I want to be able to show it to them through my life. So that's when I just started investing in this whole find your purpose, live your rich life. I took it more seriously again, and I decided to cough up like $20,000 for our business coach. And basically, all my skills came into play. My marketing skills came in. That's how I generated millions of views on my articles now. And then I discovered neuroscience. That's where my healthcare background came in. And that's what I realized gave me the cutting edge, because I don't know if a lot of people know this, but 90% of coaches, more than 90% of coaches don't make more than $30,000 a year. It's very saturated. Anyone with a pulse can call themselves a coach. So that's kind of where I started leveraging all my skills. My healthcare background helped me teach the science behind performance and producing results and all that good stuff. And I've been doing it ever since. I went full time in my business for years now. Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, it's so impactful. And, similar to you, I remember, back in my late 20s, early 30s, I had a great, as in a well-paid job working in London for Citibank. Super exciting, got to do all the things, very glamorous. But I was like, what's the point of this? Like it was very anticlimactic. And when my dad passed away, it was like I felt completely lost and I did not want to go back to that job. And I walked away from that job to go teach English. And going from like a extremely well-paid job, living a very luxurious life in London to not like being well paid as an English teacher in a foreign country is still great, but it's not the same level. But it was this moment of like, this is it. Everybody says, like, go for this career and, get this success and do all this stuff. And you get there and it's like, you look around and it's kind of like, oh, okay, now what? And same in my business, right? Like I think you were my coach the year my business hit 1 million or very shortly after. And it was like, oh, okay. Everybody else is super happy that I had a 7-figure business, but nothing really changed. And that's something I tell people all the time. Like when they're striving for the 7-figure business or the, whatever it is, it's like nothing really changes that significantly. You just have different things going on, different challenges or different celebrations. It's just a little bit different, but it's not this like, woohoo, I made it feeling. And I don't know, I've heard this like from like reading biographies of athletes and stuff like that. Like the celebration moment, that high is very fleeting. And I think it's why people go down, maybe one of the reasons why people go down the route of drugs and alcohol and like other things, right? It's you're chasing this thing, this feeling. So interesting. So viral videos, viral content, let's call it viral content. That's super interesting and exciting. Like I remember, just meeting you and it was mentioned like, Eugene's got these, viral content that he's developed. And can you share a little bit? What was that like for you to have a video go viral?
Honestly, it was very validating. It's like it's such a good feeling to put a piece of content out there and then just watch it get wildly shared. So it's both very validating and very terrifying. The terrifying part is the bigger the amount of exposure you get, the more trolls come out of the woodwork. So I remember one article I wrote, like people were totally misrepresenting it and like blaming me for stuff and saying some really harsh things when clearly in the article that is not what I was writing at all, right? But it taught me a lot about the power of effective communication because I realized after you do it 2, 3, 4 times, there's a method, there's a process to it. It's not just by accident. So, and I think that's a skill that we can all learn. That's one thing I realized. Just like, man, like this is just a skill. It's not some special unicorn that we're, the stars aligned for us and we went viral. It's, there are proper best practices in being able to clearly communicate. And that's kind of what I learned down the rabbit hole that I realized was a strength is how do you explain something clearly in a way that actually creates change and helps people actually take action, even if that means just share this piece of content I made.
Right. What do you think gets in the way of people being able to create not even viral content, just content to be putting themselves out there in the world?
Yeah, that's a great question because the initial thought in my mind is like I just went deep very quickly, right? I think the biggest hurdle in someone being able to create viral content, there's the more superficial thing of it's just a skill. It's something you practice. How do you get good at communicating? Nobody realizes that to be a good explainer, a good communicator, is something to be learned. It's not just like a gift that everyone has. It's just you just learn certain skills, the psychology behind persuasion, how to structure an explanation. These are all things we can learn, and I studied that deeply. But I realized what the deeper setback in people being able to create things is exactly that word is they're not in a creative mode. A lot of times when we're stressed, which by the way, research shows that we're stressed about at least 70% of our adult life, which triggers this part of our brain where your creativity is not being accessed, your critical thinking is not being accessed, your empathy is not being accessed. And what happens when we're in this mode of stress is we're not in a creative state. We're being in a more of a consumer state, if that makes sense. We're busy consuming and not creating. So I think that's what prevents us is a lot of times if you think about your day, and we're all guilty of this and there's no judgment around it, but I think a majority of our lives we're in consume mode instead of create mode, right? Some more so than others, but that's the only reason that we can't be creating because we're busy consuming, right? Whether it's the new course, the new television show, the new, right, the social media thing, whatever it is. But I think what most people don't realize is we tend to be in a consume mode when we're in pain, when we're afraid, and when we're stressed. That's the bottom line if you dig beneath the surface.
Yeah, I think that it's a really important thing for people to hear because to me also when we're in that consuming state or mode, we can get really caught up in comparison. And then comparison is kind of a low vibe kind of survival state, right? Because really you can't compare anybody to anybody. But say we're online and we're like, a lot of people are like, I just want to just like chill out for 5 minutes, right? And so they hop on Instagram and they're scrolling away. So you're consuming and then you'll see something. Oh, that look at that girl in that dress. Oh, I could never wear that dress. Oh my God, right? Or like, oh, look at this person. That's amazing that, they wrote this amazing little comment thing. I could never write like that. And we stop ourselves before we can do anything. We're already in comparison. And so we're not really honoring ourself, our zone of genius, and what we want to put out in the world. And I think that's been a big piece for me to learn because I'm highly competitive. I just have like a highly natural competitiveness, and that would get in the way. Like there was this weird kind of competitive, but almost leading into comparison, which keeps you stuck.
You're bringing up a really important thing. So one of the ways I distinguish it, right? Like comparison inherently in itself is not necessarily a quote unquote bad thing. But the only way for comparison to be useful is if we can, in our minds, separate a couple of things, organize a little bit, meaning only compare things that can be compared. It's when we're comparing things that can't be compared, that's when we start going into this less productive consuming state. So what do I mean by this? Skills, competencies, it's fair game to compare it. If this person's a better athlete, if this person's a better communicator, a better writer, right? Whatever the case may be, if it's a skill or competency that they're good at, something that can be learned, there's nothing wrong with comparing it because it's actually showing you how to get better at that thing you want to get better at. So usually when you see someone get better, then if you're looking at it as a skill set, it actually inspires people. It's like, oh, I see how they did it. Let me try things this way. Let me try this better. Let me try that to see if it works out better. And that's usually very productive. But a lot of us, for whatever reason, we all have our own reasons. When we're comparing something that can't be compared, we're comparing worth. When our worth can't be measured. So we look at someone and go, oh, that person's better looking than me. That person's better as a person than me. So then that's when we start feeling really bad. But it's because we're comparing something that can't be compared. But the deeper problem behind that, it's because the only reason we would compare is we already have some sort of negative limiting belief about ourselves beneath the surface. And we're just looking for a reason to prove that to ourselves. Oh, see, I told you I'm not good enough. See, this is why I'm not worth that much. That person's evidence right here. So that's kind of a really important thing to distinguish and organize because one type of comparison helps you improve at certain skills. The other type of comparison brings you down.
Yeah. And so I think in my mind or in my experience, let's say, things got muddled between competitiveness and comparison, right? Because, like, if I think about me when I played roller derby, I want to be able to skate as fast as that girl. I want to be able to jump as high as that girl. I want to be able to, hit as hard as that person over there. So that to me isn't necessarily comparison. That's competitiveness. Like I'm being competitive against another athlete. But I think in my brain, it got muddled between comparison and competitiveness. And you're right, like it comes down to that subconscious worthiness. And so, do you see, like in your experience in coaching people, how does that worthiness show up for people in their life, in their business? Like, what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So, I work with a lot of high performing individuals, whether it's, leaders, business owners, political leaders sometimes, right? And it's interesting because it's shown up in ways for them that they never even noticed. So, what do I mean by this? That competitiveness that you describe. So, with athletics, for example, there's a lot of athletes there who think that they're competitive, but it's because of comparison. They're trying to fight for their worthiness. If I don't get this trophy, if I don't win this game, then I'm not worth much. And I've come to realize a lot of us operate in that, thinking that it's healthy, but it's not. It's actually toxic. It usually leads to burnout, and it usually leads to a lot more anticlimactic moments, just like we mentioned earlier. You get the thing you want, and you're like, why didn't I get it? And the science behind this is because when your body is stressed, it only operates in one of two states. It operates in what I call a survival state or an executive state. So the thing to know about the survival state, it's simply a state where you can't think. You're reacting without thinking, because it's the same mode when you're in front of a tiger that's about to eat you. If you start thinking, you might die. So your brain only knows how to react in this mode. Executive state is when your brain and nervous system feel safe, and now all of these superpowers are on, whether it's your empathy, your creativity, your critical thinking skills. So the problem is, majority of our life, we're in the survival state. Because you have to think about how often are you anxious, scared, angry, frustrated, depressed, and your brain can't help but perceive these feelings as a threat, because there's research that shows emotional pain can be just as painful as physical pain. So now, when you're in the survival mode, remember, you're only reacting without thinking. And when you're reacting, you only know how to do it in one of three ways. You react by either fighting, or you flee, or you freeze. Fight, flight, freeze. So that fight response, it's obvious if you're in danger, you might pick up a weapon to fight. But a lot of us, we're fighting for our worth, if that makes sense, because we already believe we're unworthy. So how does this show up in daily life? We overwork. Or when we're stressed, our go-to thing is to work. And a lot of us high performers think it's our strength, which it can be a strength, but if you're operating from survival, it becomes toxic. It's a guarantee for burnout. And I'll give examples of this. A lot of us are fighters. I had a client, he achieved everything you could imagine that you wanted on paper. He had the multi-million-dollar business. He had the beautiful home, the beautiful family, the beautiful car. And he's in his 60s now. And he's had that anticlimactic moment way too many times. Like, why is it that no matter what I accomplish, I'm still unhappy, I'm still anxious? And we're talking about the fight, flight, freeze response. And he has this aha moment about the fight response. He's going, oh my God, I've been fighting my whole life. And I'm going, fighting for what? It's like, well, I've been trying to prove to people my whole life that I'm better than my older brother. Because his older brother was an NFL football player. And my client was sharing a memory with me that when he was in high school, his football coach said, don't even bother trying. You're never going to be as good as him. So he fought. And it kept leading to burnout. And one of the things that happens when you're stressed is, imagine you go to a dark forest and you hear a scary noise. Your brain's going to go into survival, thinking there's a threat. But you have to pay attention to what your brain focuses on when you're stressed, outside or inside of you. Focuses on outside. So it's going, where's the threat? So the same thing happens when we're emotionally stressed. Your brain, because it's going into survival, it keeps focusing on the outside. And that's why this anticlimactic moment keeps happening. Your brain gets tricked into thinking, man, if I change something on the outside, maybe I will feel better on the inside. Maybe I have to get more money, the job, the relationships. And until we become awake, knowing that the only reason we're feeling dissatisfied is because the feeling's been inside of us all along, and we need to look inside more, that's when things actually change, right? So part of that is just being able to understand, look, a lot of us are in fight mode, and there's many disadvantages of being in that. The second big disadvantage is you go into tunnel vision. If a tiger walks into your room, you're not going to look anywhere else except where that tiger is. But this is why our brains get blind spots. You're not focusing on all this other information when you're stressed, where usually there's the opportunities there that you might not be seeing, or the solutions there that you might not be seeing. And the false reality that we fall into because of this is we think we need the fight mode. I had another client argue with me because he hit rock bottom. He fought his butt off and worked his butt off to get to where he got to, which was, multiple 7-figure business, Inc. 5000 recognized, and all that good stuff. And he's arguing with me. He's like, no, sometimes you need that survival state, right? Because it got me to where I'm at. I had to keep my head down and my shoulders up, and I'm bashing through concrete wall after concrete wall. And I'm like, that's a fair and valid point. But just for thought exercise purposes, what if, because even if it's for a moment, you taught yourself how to relax and get out of the fight mode and get into your executive state, you might have realized that those brick walls that you felt that you had to bash through to get to where you got to in life were only 3 feet wide. Meaning, what if when we're in fight mode, we're keeping our head down, working so hard because of our tunnel vision, we think one path is the only option we've got, when in fact there's an infinite amount of options to get to where you need to go. Meaning you don't have to make it so hard on yourself, right? I think a lot of us high performers are guilty of like making it hard for ourselves when it doesn't need to be. And that's what happens when we're in this fight mode. And there's no judgment around it. It's just when we're stressed, that's what our brain and nervous system does.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And, I remember the moment when you helped me see that my overdoing, my overworking was actually a survival state because I owned that like it was like a crown. And it was like, look at me. I do all these things. I am very successful. This is what it takes to be successful. And like, really proud of myself for this crazy state that I was living in. And when you help me see that this was actually, sure, this got a result, but is this how I wanted to experience life? Like, is this what I wanted my future to look like? How long was I willing to keep living at this pace? And that was like I think, a game changing moment. But also, I realized that my nervous system was jacked up so high I might as well have been on like cocaine or something. It took me a good 6 to 10 months to bring my nervous system down, to bring myself into like a regulated state. And it was still lots of up and down, but a real game changer because I think, it's like I remember when I was coaching somebody and he asked me, well, what are you seeing that I don't see? What's my blind spot? And I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to know? Like, what do you mean? But to me, that was an example where you saw something I did not see whatsoever because I actually was very proud of that. And I don't know if you remember, but like I called the person I was working for at the time and was like, I quit. And he was like, pardon? I'm like, yep, I quit. I'm out effective immediately. I can't do this anymore. And it really significant shifts in my life after that. So I'm incredibly grateful for you. And I love the way that you explain this to people because it makes sense. And, similar to that guy that, you were referencing, I would ask everybody who's listening to this to consider these wins, these successes, these things that we feel really proud of. Are they coming from this empowered executive state of being, or is there some survival, some fear, some lack, some scarcity in there that maybe you're not even totally aware of?
Yeah. Yeah. This was very emotional for me too, because like I was a huge fighter, right? Working 3 jobs during college, barely making it, right? And working 3 jobs after I became an adult and working full time. And I think the bottom line truth at the end of the day is, all of us will come to our own realization with this or hit the brick wall at some point, realizing no matter how much more you accomplish, you're not going to be happy because you keep trying to change things on the outside in your fight mode. And the most heartbreaking part about all of this for me was what I realized is, oh my gosh, based on the science, when you're in fight mode, your empathy's off too. You're not connecting with people. So that means when you're in fight mode, you're actually very transactional. I mean, think about romantic relationships too. I'm going to fight for love. How do you fight for love? Because what you're really saying is, I'm going to fight to try to find someone I can use to make me feel better about myself. And I'm happy to make it transactional and do the same for that person as long as I keep getting what I want. But the moment I don't get what I want, guess who's getting thrown under the bus? It's that person. And the heartbreaking part was I was doing that with my family. I had a big self-worth thing. I grew up believing I didn't matter because, my parents were never home. I didn't fit in as well at school. I was kind of a quirky kid. And I just remember thinking about that. I used to claim that I do these nice things for my kids and my wife because I love them so much. But that wasn't true because I still harbored that belief of I don't matter. You know what my brain was doing subconsciously? It was going, hey, fight to matter by doing these nice things for your family, and maybe one day you will finally feel like you matter. We'll use them for that. And how do I know this is true? What happens in that argument when I have with my wife when we get, upset or whatever?
I do all these things for you.
Exactly. Why don't you do this for me? Does that mean I actually did it from a place of abundance and generosity, like authenticity? No, I was using my family. And when we're fighters, we become transactional. The same thing happens at work. Your boss might pretend they care about you when things are all good, but the tides turn. They're treating you a different way. They're using you like a commodity. And I think that's such an important thing because, for me, it goes deeper than just performing better. It's about connecting too. Because I don't want my kids to feel used by me. I don't want my family to feel used by me, my clients. And we can't do this until we look inwards and look at, are we actually fighting or not? Because if we're in fight mode, someone's getting hurt. I think that's the bottom line, isn't it? If you're in fight mode, someone's getting hurt because you're attacking. You're in attack mode. You're not in connect mode and gather together and help each other mode. You're in hurting someone mode.
It's so true, so true. And I have caught myself doing that where, like, your kids are being crazy or they're not appreciative. And I'm like, I do all this stuff for you. Like, I expect some gratitude or, like I paying for this or that or taking you here or there. And like, the least you could do is this for me. And then I realize, like, oh, one of the things I teach to my clients is like giving without any expectation of an outcome. And I realize, like, oh, I'm giving with an expectation of an outcome. It might not be an immediate expectation, but somewhere underneath, there's this expectation that they are going to do this thing that I want them to do in the future. And so I had a huge learning curve for that. And my divorce was a huge teacher for me in giving without expectation of outcome because it wasn't like the standard kind of divorce where the lady gets the spousal support and stuff like that. Like mine was a little bit different. And I wanted to give. I was in a place to give and I wanted to give. And it really taught me if I started to feel like I'm doing all this stuff for you, like, why are you so angry with me? I had to catch myself and go, that's not why I'm doing it though. I'm not doing it to be a peacemaker. I'm doing it because I love this person and they need this right now. It's a really big thing, I think. And it is such this whole concept of survival state or suffering or executive empowered, whatever anybody wants to label it, is a game changer. And to understand your own state of being and how it shows up for you, because it doesn't show up for everybody the same way.
Yeah. And it's like, the rabbit hole goes so deep. And it was so eye opening for me because I realized too, when we're in this fight mode, your brain wants very easy answers. It starts thinking black and white thinking. But then I'm sitting there going, wait, hold on. If you look at the source of suffering in the whole world, it's because of black and white thinking. It's literally two parties, usually two, thinking black and white, and they're in fight mode because they're busy either attacking the other party, right, bashing on them, or defending, or they're in flee mode too, right, flight, by avoiding them, and then it just gets more divisive, and we don't see the humanness in each other, and then it's just causing so much suffering. No one's willing to meet in the middle ground, but because honestly speaking, it's because deep down I can guarantee it's because it terrifies people, right, to have these middle ground conversations, because when we're in fight mode, our brain needs black and white answers. If a tiger's in front of you about to eat you, you can't have gray area. But then that's a single source of all the suffering that's going on in our minds because we think it's so black and white, and it prevents us from just looking at all the context. Look at the whole picture here. And the next thing you know, that's when you realize all these blind spots that were there, they're not blind spots anymore. And all it means is we just have to stop fighting. And it means we need to go inwards and think, wait, hold on, I finally see it. I can see why I'm fighting so much. Then you have to ask the next question, wait, what am I fighting for? And a lot of times we're fighting for worth. We're fighting for value. But what does that mean? It means we already believe about ourselves that I don't have value. I don't matter. I'm a loser. Insert whatever belief we've carried because of our unique life experiences. And I think that was the most liberating thing, is to understand at a deep heart level, I don't need to fight. I don't want to fight. I can relax. Because the moment I do that, then I can see. I can see the things that I haven't been seeing. You ever hear that phrase? Oh, back then I didn't know what I didn't know. But if you keep repeatedly having that experience, right? Oh my God, there was another blind spot. There was another blind spot. Then it's a good question to ask. Wait, why am I not seeing my blind spots? Oh, maybe I am busy fighting. Because a lot of us don't like to spend time with what we don't know.
Well, your brain doesn't like that uncertainty, right?
Correct. It's ingrained in us from the cavemen, cavewoman days, because back then you go into uncertain territory, you might get killed by a wild animal. We're wired to focus on survival. But the better we get at understanding that what won't kill you, it's okay to be with it. It won't, if it won't kill you, then it's okay to be with it, even though it feels uncomfortable. And it actually helps you grow. That's courage, is the willingness to just be with that uncertainty. And that's how we grow from it. That's when you start seeing, oh, you get better and better at uncovering your blind spots and growing from it.
So, so powerful. And, I think truly, the evolution of the human being, like I know you're so educated in Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and stuff, and the power of our mind and our subconscious. And, I even had this experience in my life with my family where, my brother was diagnosed with a terminal illness, given 2 years. We're on year 3 because he's like, fuck it. I'm just going to live my life. Like, is he in the best of health? No. Are things deteriorating? Yes. But he's just focused on enjoying his life now. So he stepped out of that survival. He lived pretty much, I would say, every day in some form of survival. Some fear, scarcity, lack, driving in rush hour traffic, commuting both ways, like, the price of fuel or groceries or like all these things. And now he's just like, I don't care. Dying anyways, right? But we're like 3 years in and he's still going, right? So I'm like, just enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that you bring up that scenario, because that's a very common thing that happens. Is if you understand what happens in your body the moment you relax, you get out of survival, you're in what's called a rest and digest state. You're conserving energy instead of wasting it. But when you're stressed, because your body goes into survival, think about what's happening in your body when you feel threatened. Your heart's working harder, it's beating faster. Your lungs are working harder, it's overworking. Your digestive system shuts down, because if your body thinks it's about to die, it's not a time to be processing food and metabolizing food. So then you're not even getting the energy from your food. And this is why a lot of people have digestion issues when they're stressed. You have adrenaline pumping through your body, cortisol pumping through your body, and long-term exposure to cortisol, ask anyone, it damages your immune system. And the more that we're stressed, your body's wasting so much energy instead of conserving it. So that's what's happening when we're in fight mode. But the moment you relax, your body is recuperating. It's moving towards balance. In biology, it's called homeostasis. It's moving towards balance, and it's promoting healing versus preventing it. So it's just interesting that not only does it help your mind, it helps your body too. Because look, if you're going to be in survival, you can eat all of the healthy food you want. It's not going to help you.
That was me. I was in such a state of survival and eating all of the good food, the juice, all the stuff you're supposed to be doing. I was doing a gut healing protocol. You name it, I was doing it. I was exercising like a crazy person, right? And I was the most unhealthy body, like human being, I think. Like I didn't have any kind of chronic illness, but I look at pictures. I did a side-by-side picture of me now compared to me in 2018, and I don't even look like the same person. And I've showed it to friends and family, and I'm like, holy moly. And it all comes, I believe, from that
moment that I realized that I was in this survival state, that I realized that my body was so like jacked up on adrenaline and cortisol. I wasn't absorbing any of the nutrition I was putting in my body. It was like I might as well just been flushing money down the toilet. Or the supplements I was taking all these like really expensive supplements and stuff. Nothing was like sticking. My naturopath didn't understand what was going on. My doctor didn't understand what was going on. Like nothing made sense. And then I focused on my nervous system and calming my body down. And I focused on recognizing for me what it looked like to be in survival. So even recently, I had some things happen in my business, as you know, Eugene, and I'm away, in Africa, and all I could hear was your voice in my head saying, just relax, Michelle. Like, and I was like, okay, I gotta just let go and relax and go with the flow. And nothing bad really happened. Like, the business is still there, the people are still there, the bills got paid. Like, it's such a testament to this work, I think.
Yeah, we make better decisions when we're relaxed. At the end of the day, your survival brain is so short-term focused, it can't think long-term. And that's when we usually go into like what's called like a win the lottery mentality. I just need the one thing to fix everything, and then everything will be all good. But we're not thinking about years ahead. And the reason this happens is because when you're relaxed, because your critical thinking centers are going back online, your long-term thinking is going back online, you're able to make better decisions because when you look at the whole picture, you get this thing called clarity. Clarity always breeds action. And that's a powerful place to be in. When you have full clarity, you take powerful action versus desperate action when we're in survival and we're just trying to do the thing that will hopefully fix everything. And we're usually solving the wrong problem when we're in short-term thinking. We put a Band-Aid on a wound that needs surgery when we're in survival. So that's kind of where I found it to be so powerful because especially for high performers, when you're accomplishing a lot and you're working a lot, when we're in survival, we tend to it feels like this endless, like you're plugging small holes in a drowning ship when there's a bigger problem. And it just feels like that hamster on a wheel experience over and over again. But until we can look at the whole picture and finally look at everything, that's when true clarity comes and you can actually create some results that you really want to and develop this experience of an enjoyable life versus a stressful, busy one. I mean, I'm from New York City, right? I grew up with that programming too, that if you're not busy, you're lazy. If you're not busy, you're not productive.
And your cultural background, right? Like it might be stereotypical, but Asian people, they're busy people,
Yeah.
right?
We're the model minority. And I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of unfortunate part in that, which is like we get trained into you just work hard, you'll succeed. But majority of us worked hard, but then we're still getting the same paycheck and we get jaded by the time we're in our 40s, 50s, 60s going, wait, there's a glass ceiling here. And we think that just working a stable 9 to 5 job is going to be the key to wealth when it's not. There's so much more to it and so much more to understand that oh my gosh, I mean, some of the things Michelle, man, if my parents understood it like years ago, I think we would have been in a totally different financial scenario. But yeah, it's about working smarter, not harder, because that's what happens when we're in survival.
My parents were immigrants. They're white people and they come from England. So it's not the same situation, but they were still immigrants and they had to start over. And I think what's interesting is that so many people come from immigrant parents if you're living in North America. And they all have a common experience, shared experience. And it's really time for people to look at that because our parents or our grandparents, they did what they had to do to make ends meet, to make a better life for their kids, but they were doing the best they could with what they had, the knowledge they had. It's up to us to change that.
100%. You know what the ironic thing is, right? Like a lot of our immigrant parents, for those listening who have immigrant parents, it's like it's all ironic because they try to instill in the child's generation like to go after what's safe. Go get that 9 to 5. Nothing wrong with 9 to 5s, but I'm talking about like the mentality behind it. Like they think it's safe when it's actually probably the more risky thing. As an entrepreneur now, I'm like thinking, really? Like one source of income, like that's all you're going to create.
It's the paradox.
That's the paradox, right? Like that's the safe thing to do versus create multiple streams of revenue. But the irony though is just like, well, hold on. Like if you're the immigrant, if the parents the immigrant, didn't they take the biggest risk? Right? You go to a new country, new culture, and you're trying to start from scratch. And you're telling the child to buckle down when in actuality, the child can probably leverage the parents' experiences and produce so much more from that. And that's what I have so much gratitude for is for, with my parents is like, yeah, like they sacrificed so much for me. But I felt aside from like the depression and the anxiety, I was just like, man, if I don't create more than just this one thing in my life, I would be doing them a disservice, even though it means, you know what I mean? Even though if it means I might fail, I might have to take risk again, which I did. I mean, there is nothing more satisfying than like being able to create what's inside of you and express it out into the world. I don't know how else to describe that feeling, right? Like it's just such a satisfying feeling. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. But like that's what I realized. It's just like it just starts with this awareness. A lot of times I just had so many blind spots. If I was just aware that the reason I was working so hard was because I believed I didn't matter and I thought I had to fight for my worth. I mean, how much heartache would that save the sooner we find that out than later? And then the deeper thing behind that is just like becoming aware of that, then training myself and understanding a lot of the science and all that. I realized that's where the science is a game changer, the neuroscience, which is I talk about so much. But the moment you get better at this, at regulating your nervous system, you just form deeper connections in your life. They're authentic relationships instead of transactional ones. And it means so much to me for my family. I mean, like, this is a mission that I'm on, man. Like, imagine our kids learning stuff like this, like the basic science and how to regulate our nervous system and all that. Get out of fight mode, get out of flight mode, get out of freeze mode. I think that's the first battle is just being able to see it. Most people think, oh, I'm procrastinating because it's my personality. It's like, no, we're in a flight mode. Oh, I'm drinking alcohol because I'm craving it. It's like, no, you're fleeing from whatever pain's been there based on trauma or whatever. That's a flight mode. Just being able to spot it better, I think it's going to be a game changer. And that's kind of what I'm shouting from the rooftops. It's just showing a little bit of the science, right? In a basic way. It just excites me on how much, what would the world look like if we all equipped ourselves with some basic training and awareness around the survival state and how it's preventing us from accessing our gifts, accessing our talents, accessing our empathy. That's kind of been the mission I've been on, and it's so cool. Like, I mean, you've been a part of this world, which I'm so grateful for. Man, like that's what excites me. If more people understood this, and I'm happy to use my, marketing skills to get it out into the world more.
Yeah. Well, and your marketing skills are gold.
Thank you.
So I will attest to that. So thank you for sharing this. I think it's just really, really important information for us to put out into the world. And if people want to learn more about you and what you do, how they could work with you, how they could follow you, where do they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on social media. I'm under Eugene K. Choi. K is my middle initial. Choi is spelled CHOI. You can find me on social media, or I also launched an online program called Neurohacking School, where it shows you all the science behind all of this and the training and building the awareness like we discussed on this call, and we take it to a much deeper level. That's going to be at neurohackingschool.com. And that's the course that you can sign up for if you want to join that and be a part of my community. Or I have a podcast as well, neurohackingpodcast.com. And that's where I have my interviews and my podcast episodes as well for anyone who wants to kind of listen in on, be a fly on the wall with all the conversations.
Thank you so much for taking this time. Really, really impactful. And I'm just so incredibly grateful to have you in my world.
Thanks so much for having me. And likewise, so grateful for you too, Michelle.
So thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. You know what? In our conversation today, Eugene differentiates between comparing our skills to others. I like to think of this as my competitive side, and comparing ourselves. We can get inspired to become a better manager, a better leader based on someone's awesome management skills, for example, but we can't inspire ourselves into having J-Lo's butt or Miley's arms. The latter leads to edging ourselves into the high stress mode. And not only is that bad for our bodies and minds in countless ways, but the survival state, the fight, flight, or freeze mode, blocks our creative faculties. So there's one thing I'm taking away from today's episode is that stress is the enemy of creativity. And so I'm going to think about what can I do to reduce stress in my life even more. For example, I just purchased a Harmony necklace. Now this is an EMF blocking necklace that I'm wearing now that is directly aligned with my body. I don't know if this is some kind of magical piece of jewelry, but I'm going to let you know how it goes. Maybe I can get somebody on the podcast to share all about the Harmony necklace. Be sure to join us next week on episode 29, where I'm breaking all the rules, all of the money rules, that is. I'm going to be telling you all about all the money rules that exist and how you can use them to leverage your gifts, your strengths, your unique money code, and create your rich life revolution.
Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you got at least one gold nugget today. Be sure to grab your copy of the Rich Life Revolution workbook to help you set the foundation for your next level of wealthy. Get it now at richliferevolution.ca, and I'll see you later.